Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk specifically about D&D Studio today. All right, so I've just been a really great space from a D&D perspective recently. I my family loves me very much, and I got a lot of Father's Day ties for a long time. But I kind of put my foot down ungraciously, but this is terrible. Ungraciously this last Christmas, and I was like, I don't want whatever jank thing you get me. I want D&D books. Get them, right? And I did. I got like a dozen D&D books for Christmas, and I could not be happier, right? So one, it takes me about a month or two at least to process a D&D book because I take a crap ton of notes about them, and I chunk up my. Oh, by the way, what are we talking? We're talking specifically about I want to get to the point where I'm saying what I'm talking about at the beginning of the video very succinctly. We're talking about the importance of D&D Studios. We're talking about the roles of Dungeons & Dragons design today and what it means. Right now, it's cut up into executive producer, game architects, design manager, and design department. And we're going to talk about this. So basically, I got like a dozen books for Christmas, right? And I'm trying to work my way through these Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition books. Well, when I read a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition book, when I read a D&D Now book, it takes a ton of processing for me because I see it in so many perspectives. There's the perspective of delight. I am delighted by Dungeons & Dragons Now products, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition products. I'm just genuinely delighted. So I'm experiencing it with a distinct perspective of joy. I have just so much love for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition at this point that I'm just thrilled with every new book. And there are no bad D&D books for me anymore. I'm going to be just flat out objectively, I just get a ridiculous, it costs me $50, I get $500 worth of joy out of it, right? It's just the fact, right? And so, but it takes me 2-3 months. So I got books sitting on the shelf that I haven't even gotten to from Christmas, right? And so I'm very, very happy. So right now I'm going through Call to Netherdeep, and this is why it takes so long. I spent 2 days just looking at the credits page. The credits page. I spent 2 days taking notes on the credits page, right? So we're just going to talk about a slim version of the credits page. So basically, I'm really fascinated by tabletop role-playing game design, right? And you can go get my tabletop role-playing game right now for free. It's called Freight Chain Onyx, and it's my game, right? It's complicated, and it really didn't catch, fire. That's okay, I'll try another one. But I'm really, really fascinated by game design, right? And so one of the things I've realized, and I think I just want to kind of openly discuss now, is absolutely nobody goes into tabletop role-playing game design to make money. If you want to make money, you definitely should not join the tabletop role-playing game community as a game designer. The tabletop role-playing game community has literally made 0 millionaires. 0, right? Oh, you're like, oh, wait a second, Scott, what about the people who made money on Kickstarter? Yes, there have been multiple $1 million Kickstarters, right? But the reality is, the vast majority of that money goes right into actually giving the product you said you were going to give. And I don't think even Matthew Colville has walked away with $1 million plus on anything at this point, right? So the reality is, you make dirt when you go into tabletop role-playing games. So that begs the question, and honestly, here's the thing, right? You got to be super, super intelligent, super charismatic, super creative to make a tabletop role-playing game. There are 100 players in the world who snap those resources up and pay you 20 times what you could make in tabletop role-playing game design, right? And the reason why is there is a massive supply of tabletop role-playing game designers. Nobody wants to pay anybody because there are literally hundreds of people doing it for free, right? This is a ride the roller coaster job, right? Yes, there are a couple people in the world who get paid to ride roller coasters, but the reality is it's so fun, you don't have to really pay anybody because everybody wants to ride it, right? So that's the issue. The job is so fun, and there's so little actual work in it, but it really doesn't make sense to do that. It really doesn't make sense to pay a lot for tabletop role-playing game designers because the supply far outweighs the demand. Okay, so that's the reason. So once you get there, you realize, why are people doing it, right? For the street cred. They are doing it for the street cred. No one is going in tabletop role-playing and design to feed their family, right? And this is America, so that family could be you and your body pillow, you and your dog, or you, your spouse, and 12 kids, right? Like family, right? So basically, nobody is going into tabletop role-playing games to put food on the table, right? It's a passion job, right? And once you get there, then what you see on the page in Call to Netherdeep is extremely important. There is a ton of energy, time going into tabletop role-playing game titles because they are massively important, right? And this is the kicker, right? If you make some copy of Dungeons and Dragons and you make some kind of indie game that's a copy of Dungeons and Dragons, nobody cares who you are or what your game is, right? At the macro level. With Dungeons & Dragons, that is not true. You are a part of American history, right? Dungeons & Dragons is a part of American history. Satanic Panic, and then the actual real movie in 2000, the real movie that's coming up in 2023, a dozen different video games, actual best-selling novels. Like, it is a real part of real American history. So when you get your name in a Dungeons & Dragons book, you are part of history. Just like the U.S. presidency. People want that job because they know they will be listed forever in 100 different ways, right? People, the U.S. presidency, not a one of them has ever been forgotten, ever, right? And they never will be because their names are quite literally written in stone, right? And so that's the issue is with D&D, there is real street cred for this. So all this to say, Call to Netherdeep has a very incredibly carefully crafted credits page, right? And we're going to talk about half of one section on that page today. Let's talk about the D&D studio. So they listed it. They said Dungeons and Dragons Studio, and it is distinct from Dungeons and Dragons marketing, and it is distinct from the Critical Role crew who worked on the book, right? It is just D&D Studio, which is rules and which is the rules, creating the rules. And they are taking this very serious now. Ray Winninger, okay? He is executive producer. His title is listed, okay? Next is Game Architects. Game Architects. I have never seen this term before Call to Netherdeep, okay? Game Architects. Jeremy Crawford, Chris Perkins. Next is Design Manager. I think it's James Wyatt. I'm not remembering right now. But the next role is Design Manager. And get this. Ray Winninger at the top, executive producer. Buck stops here. You can have all the nice ideas you like below. He can shut them down, right? Game Architects. These people are building the rules at the macro level, across all the books, across all the settings. They're deciding what are the overarching. They're building the infrastructure, right? They're not putting rooms in a house. They're laying the foundation and saying the cornerstone goes here, right? They're architects. They're doing the major high-end infrastructure design, right? Design Manager. That person's getting down into the nitty-gritty on each book and saying, hey, this magic item works this way and this magic item works this way. And the reality is, with Crawford and with Perkins, they're no longer in the business of. I don't think they're in the business of individual magic item design anymore, right? They're above that level, right? But the Design Manager will do that on a book, right? They'll actually might design a non-player character, an actual specific magic item. Those kind of elements, a monster, right? Then below that is the design department, and there are like 10 people listed in the design department on this book, right? And those are people bringing in different ideas, different content, right? And without a doubt, there are no less than 30 to 50 names connected to every Dungeons & Dragons book now. And this is why I keep telling you, Dungeons & Dragons should be your primary game. Right? I know you got this cute little game that you like to play that nobody knows the name of, or the following is so small that if you said the name to any actual Muggle American who doesn't play tabletop role-playing, they would not know it, right? Like, whereas with Dungeons & Dragons, It is world famous, and Americans know it, right? And the reality is, the design on these books is, it is my opinion that a Dungeons and Dragons design book, the Dungeons and Dragons tabletop role-playing game, primary content vehicle, the hardbacks, each of them, in my opinion, cost $1 million plus to bring to market. $1 million plus to bring to market. And that is not the case for your silly little PDF that was scrawled off by two people in a garage on their weekends, right? This is real deal, real tabletop momentum, real infrastructure, real street cred, real history. This is D&D, don't play. It's not just another indie PDF that somebody scrawled off. This stuff has an entire industry actually connected to it. And if you look at the D&D studio, if you look at the credits page on Call to Netherdeep, you can see Dungeons & Dragons is doing its flex. It is flexing, right? It is saying, we here, right? Yeah, we see the rest of you as an industry, but the reality is you guys are playing in the backyard. We're out here on the main stage doing the thing, right? And that's the reality. There is an entire industry stood up on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. All the rest of this stuff is somebody's weekend hobby, right? It's just not at the same level, right? And so I'm actually extremely happy to see that they are going down this road and they are really dialing it in on D&D. And that, like, we also know D&D Studio is its own team. And if you look at the credits, right, we'll get to this maybe some other time, but I just want to list it here. Marketing is its own team too. That's another thing is, what games out there have marketing teams, right? Very, very few. Maybe Paizo, right? But the reality is generally, marketing is, the creator sent a tweet out, right? And when you go over to the marketing section, it says global marketing, right? Because this is world famous. So just when you get a chance, just look at the credits page on Call to Netherdeep. Dungeons & Dragons is mad flexing at this point. They're like, we here, all you scrubs better bow down. And that's the reality. That's where we're at, right? There's D&D and there's everything else. That's my humble opinion. What's yours? Love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.